So our parentologist comes in, and this is where they talk about baby A's measuring. Here's how baby B's measuring. Here's how baby C's measuring. They tell us all about, are they on track? This is what is in those conversations. Well, now this conversation was a lot different from the one we had 2 weeks ago when we first saw our parentologist. And this is where the bombshell drops for us. She had told us that baby B, Samara, was experiencing growth restriction. And I believe the formal term is fetal growth restriction. And the way they explained it was that in the umbilical cords, everyone has 2 arteries. Every baby has 2 arteries. And those 2 arteries help feed and, provide the nutrition to the baby. Well, in baby B, Samara's case, it was, hey, we found that this baby only has 1 artery. So the growth is not there as far as the pace of baby A and C. And so then, we were just okay, those is right away was a tough conversation. And then she goes on to say there are a few different ways you can go about this. She talked to us about how there's an option of reduction. And if you don't reduce, well, here's what can happen. And a lot of what can happen is because Samara, baby B, and Nora, baby C, they shared that placenta. They weren't the highest risks of pregnancies of twins or multiples because, again, like I said earlier, Amelia, baby A, she had her own sac. Samara and Nora shared, but they still had separation. They shared the sac, but they still had, I forgot the formal term of what that is, but they had separation, so they weren't the highest risk because often when there's no separation there and the babies are completely exposed to each other, then I think the risk happens to where they can not squash each other, but basically there's extremely high risk. And I forget the exact term, so I will get better, and we'll talk about that next on a later episode. But regardless, they still shared that. They still shared that placenta, and so because they did, she talked about the risks of that, right? Because if baby B, who's not growing as much or the same pace as baby A and C, well, this is what can happen. It can cause trouble for baby C now. And so these are all ifs. These are all possibilities. They're not saying they didn't say it was going to happen, but I remember Lisbeth and I were just in tears because we were like, what? I never even knew this was this is just my own ignorance. Never knew this was a thing.